and we're going to bring them into conformity with our law. We are a law-abiding people, and we want there to be obedience to the state at every point. And that's something that we're instinctively drawn to, and particularly your authoritarian Republicans. Now, Republicans are conservative socialists by and large. That is to say, they're socialists, but they are conservative. They favor traditional morality. They favor the family, small business, and the like. And the Democrats are liberal socialists. They are more revolutionary. Their heirs are, or their ancestors are the French revolutionaries in pure rationalism to reorganize society based on concepts that are written out in long papers with paragraphs and subparagraphs. Right? That's the rationalist approach, like the Democratic Party platform of 2016, which I looked into a little bit this last weekend. Your Democrats, your liberals are socialists. They're progressive socialists. Your Republicans are conservative socialists, but all share in the same premise. And yet we can draw from each strengths of mind and see some good things in both sides. Well, this is David Toulis, and I want to think about the constituents for traffic enforcement. Traffic enforcement is of great interest to the public because everybody deals with traffic. Everybody deals with the police officer on the street. You rarely encounter a cop, you, my listener, unless you're on the road, or that's where you see cops, and that's where you may have a chance to have a pleasant encounter with a deputy, a trooper, or an officer. And so reform and the ideas that make up reform are worth considering. And caller, you're live on the air, David Toulis Show. What's on your mind?
David, I'll tell you what infuriates me is the police use probable cause as an excuse to search cars. Your turn signal wasn't on, you were weaving, and the courts have said your car is the equivalent of your house. That's your property. That's your space. So how can we have it both ways, whereby they can search your vehicle without consent, but they say you've consented, because they cunningly coerce you out of your constitutional rights? Police are trained to lie. I'm not anti-cop. I'm anti-individuals that want to violate your individual rights, but they are trained to cunningly coerce you out of your constitutional rights. And a right cannot be turned into a crime. And you must assert your rights, according to the Supreme Court, to have them. You must be belligerent or warlike. No, you cannot search my vehicle without a search warrant. Don't ask the question again, because that is equivalent to your house. On the issue of, you were talking about character. I was at a game this weekend with kids playing volleyball, elementary school, and even the kids that did a bad job were high-fived. They hit the ball wrong, it hit the net, they high-fived them. That's the problem with America. We're high-fiving bad conduct. And I said, you suck. And the parent said, well, no, they tried. I said, no, they suck. Come on. What happens when they get in the real world and we say, you suck? You didn't do your job. You're not making us money. The company's going down the toilet. We're going to put a cry box in every business? You see, what you're talking about with socialism, which is government control over production and distribution, is an infection. It's an infection. And the infection begins with mom, dad, your grandparents, and the school system. And then the kid, just by mere touch, absorbs the infection. And I don't know how to kill it. I mean, I really don't. I think this is an infection that may not be able to be killed. But it is terminal.
It is terminal, and I think it can be wrung from the body politic or squeezed from the body politic only by a grave crisis where the public mind, public confidence in the state is so devastated that people turn against the very idea of a state and also turn against the very idea of long-term and short-term debt.
David, see what they're doing in each ridge? People will respond when they see it affects them personally, because most people act in a selfish manner. When they see that my house may be taken, they act. When they see my health care benefits are going to be taken, they act. When they see Obamacare, what happens? You have the Tea Party. The people that were involved in the Tea Party could care less about individual constitutional rights for years. The IRS abusing people, taking their houses, improper court filings, on and on and on, until it affected them. You're taking my health care away. You're forcing me to buy health care. Then all of a sudden now, the so-called conservative Tea Parties arise. If it doesn't affect them individually, they're silent.
Well, how can my listener take more of an interest in what's happening to those I identify as the poor and the stranger on this traffic enforcement issue?
Forget about groups and organizations, because the power resides within you. And the strongest
the individual listener
language is no. I'm not going to accept your social security number. I'm not going to accept your privileges. I'm not going to accept your benefits. No, you can't search my car. No, 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 no. The only country in the world that you were literally born free, you've got liberty. And by saying yes, you lose your liberty. Do you mind if I search your car? Yes, I do. I don't have any contraband, but no, you can't. You're wasting my time. Can I search your car? Because where do you get your money? The taxes I pay. Can I search your car? Do you have a weapon on you? Do you have a weapon on you? Are you being a smartass? Are you being a smartass? Why are you asking me these questions? Because I didn't put my turn signal on? Write me a ticket and let me go. Men have been neutered by women primarily. They're put on drugs in school. They cut their gonads off. Listen, why don't we just neuter the boys at birth and turn them into little girls? I'm not saying women aren't strong. I think women in some instances are more stronger than men. But I say that figuratively, where you're dealing with feminine people, feminine women. But, this day and age, I've seen women stronger than men. The men don't stand up, the women do. The men are growing them, the women are growing them, the men are losing them. What's going on with that?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because that's one reason, Mike. I try to direct my show to the male listener, because I want my man listener to be more testosterone.
I mean, I'm looking at Facebook and what we have here. I bet you half of your listeners are females. I mean, forget about that. The men have dropped the ball. Admit it, men. The men have dropped the ball. They don't run their house. They don't run their family. They let their kids run all over them. They let their boss run all over them. They're not men anymore. The women run the country. And that's why women listen to talk radio more and more. They're more involved.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, and thank you for bringing up the subject. I'll listen.
Well, listen, thanks, Mike. I appreciate your call. And Mike is making the point that we just have to say no. And I think we've gotten confused on our spelling. We're making what I would laughingly call it a spelling error. The word is not. It's a two-letter word. It's not on. It's as in on, getting on, going along, coming on board with the program. Vote Republican, vote Democrat. Do what Robin Smith suggests. Care about your elections. It's not ON, it's NO. And I think we start there. The word has to be directed to those promising us security, promising us benefits, breaks, favor, just join the club and be a part of our scheme. We are the collective. We know what's best, and share in the risk. You also get to share in the spoil. So the invitation for sharing the spoil is great, and that's why we have an economy that's deadlocked at the top. It can't be reformed, and we have systems that are so brittle, so giant, so unresponsive to feedback that they can't last. And the bureaucracies among them have lost any of their early idealistic mission in government service, and they are simply self-maintaining empires within the federal system. We just have to say no and be discerning. And I think if we're lococentric, we give ourselves a head start in that program. Think somehow in your mind, you, my listener, that what happens in Chattanooga and Hamilton County is more important than what happens in Nashville and in Washington. And Washington. And that's why I argue for local economy and the free market here on the David Tula Show. Love your neighbor and buy local. And this if you go to Nuganomics.com, look at my post over the weekend regarding the constituencies for traffic enforcement reform. This is and I've already put this material out and discussed it in terms of Andy Burke, thinking that Andy Burke might want to look at this. He has been notified of the Title 55 problem, okay, and he can make a reform in Chattanooga. And my thinking is that Chattanooga needs to lead the way making the city a sanctuary against abusive enforcement of Title 55, starting with David Roddy. David Roddy is the servant. He's the Captain Segura, if you will, of Mayor Andy Burke, and he takes orders, right? He takes orders, and so the mayor simply has to say, we're going to have to obey the law on this point, guys. We need to clean up our act. We need to stop enforcing the transportation statute on people who are clearly not involved in transportation. And the reform that I have proposed in at least one talk here on the air is asking a question. A single question will clarify everything and end abusive enforcement of the transportation statute against people not involved in transportation. And that one question is, well, just stay tuned. I'll tell you what that question is. But the constituencies for reform, ground up, bottom up, people up reform, the means of that are here. They're here. And in this one area, there are many areas where this reform can take place. But one area in which I have been given by God's grace and I guess by opportunity and labor to see something that's not been seen before. The reform is against abusive and overbroad enforcement of that law. That law has afflicted 10 of the 41 people in the most recent booking report in Hamilton County. But here now, if we look at the details, suddenly I have questions thrown up at me, and maybe you want to do that yourself. You attack this position by calling me at 800-8949, 800-8949. Brought to you by yournews.com. Go to Nuganomics. I don't remember if I posted this story on Your News, but if I haven't, just you can see it at Nuganomics, and it looks at the constituencies for traffic enforcement reform, and that's the question, Robin Smith, that I have for your candidate. You are maybe I'll bring this up here in the Chattanooga Times Free Press has a commentary in the headline. Very important headline. Yes, it matters who governs. Okay, every Monday, Robin has an essay from a conservative perspective on politics and government, and it says that she is the former chairwoman of the Tennessee Republican Party, owns Rivers Edge Alliance, which is a flack house, lobby, and she's also involved in the campaign for the mayor for Sheriff Jim Hammond. Now, it seems to me that there's a bit of an ethical conflict here for the newspaper to publish her column and not identify her as a manager in the campaign for the sitting sheriff in the county. That she should not have a column if she's involved in local politics in that way, I would suggest, because the Democrat rival Victor Miller, does he have a writer who can write columns serving his campaign and have columns appearing in the Times Free Press, not identifying himself or herself as Victor Miller's advisor or flack? Is that possible? Well, that's not happening. So Victor Miller, the Democrat who's not known in this race and not really a known quantity, he has a distinct disadvantage where the establishment political figures, Robin Smith, are in the paper every week. And of course, she's not talking about Jim Hammond here, but she's talking in her essay. It is part of the marketing of politics per se. I mean, the whole political operation is a marketing game for itself, a marketing game to convince you, the listener, or the reader in that case, that elections matter, that having this person as judge or this person as sheriff matters, because if you have the other person, you'll have problems in your county, right? You'll have problems in your court. Now, that may be true sometimes. But as I look at this issue of the abuse of Title 55, I'm asking, well, does it really matter which man is sheriff if the sitting sheriff is not responding to media questions about his enforcement practices? And this is a serious problem in the campaign for re-election by Sheriff Jim Hammond. His advisor says we are reminded of the importance of differing views of governmental power over the past few months while watching the sad situation in Liverpool, England, about Alfie Evans. So there's the discussion about Alfie's death at the hands of a progressive state welfare system in medicine in England. And what is the subtext on this? I'm not going to probably be accurate if I suggested what it was, so I won't. But she says, regrettably, at some point, relying too heavily on one's family became socially scorned and backward. Now, governments have filled the role of family. That's right. And we have an amoral dependency in too many aspects of our lives. This year, she says, is an important election year. Carefully examine whether the policies supported by your candidate or your party champion. Now, here's what Robin Smith favors. Okay, just listen to this, and I'm not wanting you to disagree with her. Okay, I'm not suggesting that, but she says, is your party and is your candidate supporting policies that champion independence, self-reliance, and liberty? Okay, on one side. Or whether the policy they support empower the state to have control over you in every area of your life. It matters very much who governs. Well, that's just, in a way, you could say that's just marketing for politics per se. And she's saying, do you want candidates who favor the state in all things, or do you want a party and a candidate who favors, as she says, independence, self-reliance, and liberty? Well, here we have in the Transportation Administrative Notice Tennessee project that I'm shepherding, we have this very question. And I have asked your candidate, Robin Smith, about the law. He is, after all, enforcing the statute. And that's what he said in an interview, a published interview with me, is his job to enforce and obey the law. Well, enforcing the law is fine, but you can't over-enforce it, right? Because if you over-enforce, you're not obeying it, right? You've got to obey and enforce, right? So enforcement, if there is compulsion driven down into society and against individuals in society, enforcement has to be pursuant to, in the scope of the law. It has to obey the law, and then enforcement, we can say for now, provisionally, is acceptable and laudable. But what if that enforcement is overbroad? Well, then, Robin, you have a problem. You have an end of independence. You have an abuse of self-reliance. You have an abuse of private activity. And that is something that David Toulis, I hear on 92.7 FM, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, and of course on your TuneIn radio app on your phone. We are making the case for independence and an enjoyment of the liberality of Tennessee law. We have a liberal law in Tennessee. It is very liberal. It doesn't cover any private activity on the road. It really doesn't. We have a law a libertarian could like in Tennessee. It covers only transportation, and it obeys the federal code in Title 49. Tennessee law in Title 55 obeys and is compliant with and in agreement with the federal law. Now, if Sheriff Hammond is enforcing Title 55 outside the scope, he's in violation of federal statute. Just think about that. So, Robin, what do we need to know? What do we need to hear from your candidate? You are the columnist of the Time Free Press, a partisan in a race, the rival being Victor Miller. Victor Miller, of course, completely ignores these issues too. So I'm not going to mention him anymore. But we have the most important man in the county, the most powerful man in the county, the sheriff. His office has a common law origin. He represents the people. He is elected. His authority rises from the earth and the people on the earth, from the ground, and that's the common law in Old England. A common law authority. He is the fief of the shire, the reef of the shire. He's the shire reef. And as she says, this year is an important election year. Carefully examine whether the policies supported by your candidate or your party champion independence, self-reliance, and liberty. Well, if you're traveling on the road privately, you are independent. If you are traveling on the road privately, not under Title 55 outside of any license, you are, in fact, independent. And you are self-reliant. You are not subject to regulation, and not because you're not using the people's roadway in an extraordinary for-profit fashion. That's what separates travel in general from transportation, the subcategory of travel. Travel is generally free, but if you are involved in profit making, in capitalism, in entrepreneurship, and you're making a profit on the roadway, like cab companies do, trucking companies do, dump truck operating companies do, rental fleet operators do, haulers do, people who are in courier services do. Those are the people, Uber drivers, they are involved in commerce, and that's called an extraordinary use of the public asset. The state is there to protect the public asset, the road, and the people on that road. It's there to protect them. It has authority to control only some of them, and those would be those involved in transportation. So, Robin Smith, what is your candidate's position? And do you think that I'm the only person asking this question? Well, that's fine, and probably I am, and that's because I've done the reading in your service, Robin, in your service, and the service of Sheriff Jim Hammond. There is a strong constituency for reform, as I want Robin, who makes these calculations as a Republican political manager and lobbyist, makes these calculations. The support on the left. Think of Black Lives Matter. Think of NAACP. Think of the Democratic Party. Think of those who favor the interests of immigrants, those who favor the interests of minorities, namely African Americans, those who favor the interests of the poor. Now, these often are liberal-leaning political groups, lawyer lobbies such as the ACLU, and others. In fact, one of these groups brought a very important lawsuit in Nashville in U.S. District Court, Judge Alita Trauger's court, against the state and its abusive, extraordinarily abusive driver's license revocation policy. One that, as I want you to know, is created from nothing. It is under authority ex nihilo, authority from nowhere, an activity where people are granted a license, then the license is revoked administratively, and apart from any person's application thereto. Or therefore, and it is government by fiat, right? We have government by fiat left and right, and it's oppressive of you, okay? And because it's oppressive of you, we know that it oppresses the poor more than it oppresses you. You're worried about being stopped by a cop. You're anxious about that. Well, think of the poor man with no insurance, too poor for insurance, an old car that doesn't have a proper registration, and he doesn't have a driver's license. Why? Because it got revoked. He got revoked because he didn't pay an earlier court fine, and he just can't get the money together to pay it. I'm thinking of, in East Ridge Traffic Court, Tiffany McQuinn, a woman who works in a restaurant and has, get this, $13,000 in debt to the state for various and sundry fines and fees and non-payment. She had a DUI case 10 years ago, and she still hasn't paid enough on that to get on the payment plan to pay off $14,000 in debt to this fictional entity, the state of Tennessee, a godless fictional entity that is operating against you. It's operating against you, against your rights. David Toole is here. 800-8949, 800-8949. Is capital the basis of, is capital based on character? Is capitalism based on character? Yes. Can you find people of character to work for you? That is a tough question. David Toole, News Radio.